Welcome back to Morning Express. It's time for us now to look at the state of the nation, and I'll introduce the panel that we have this morning. And to my extreme left, we have Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., and he's a senator for Makueni County. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have Barack Muluka, who's a publishing editor, also a strategic communications advisor. Good morning.
Morning,
You look
Mike.
surprised, like you didn't know the title.
Not quite. For other reasons.
For other reasons.
Which will become apparent as
Welcome.
we go on.
All right, welcome. Last but not least, we also have Senator Moses Kajwang, who is also Senator for Homa Bay. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Mike.
Let me also mention that I had tried to have somebody from Jubilee also join us on the set, but for reasons that and we can't explain right now, we've not been able to have one coming in. But nevertheless, we'll still continue with the debate and see how to go about this. And I believe that we'll have a very balanced debate, looking at things as they are, not necessarily politicizing them, but stating them for what they are. All right, now, one of the things we'd like to start off with is the re-emergence of the debate on ICC. And maybe just to bring our memories up to speed, we've had the president mention this during Jamhuri Day. We've also had different people from different quarters say what they had to say. Before we begin that debate, let's just refresh our memories.
Started to see many more nations openly recognizing that the ICC is not impartial. Some have withdrawn, others have considered that step. Twice, our parliament has passed a motion to withdraw. We have sought the changes that will align the ICC to respect national sovereignty. Those changes have not been forthcoming. We will therefore need to give serious thought to our membership.
Takiwa na kama vile Bwana Uhuru Kenyatta wanakuwa ndani ya cell mpaka kesi ipishe, lakini ICC limehurumia. Kwa hivyo yeye natakana atoe pongezi na shukrani kwa ICC, si kusema tu Kenya itatoka kwa ICC.
He is the architect, he is the mother and the father of the ICC cases in Kenya. I thought after our leaders were found not guilty, I thought Raila Odinga will go and say hallelujah. My scheme didn't work.
Ultimately, he has proved us right that ODM wrote a letter to say William Ruto should be jailed, despite the fact that he was a deputy party leader for ODM. This is a man who does not believe in teamwork.
All right, so that's basically what's been happening. Let me start with you, Barack Muluka, on whether this is a relevant debate to be having right now.
Yeah, but before I do that, I must emphasize that I'm disappointed that we do not have Jubilee or government people on the set here.
Right.
The two gentlemen here belong to CORD, and as a person who flatters myself with the belief that I'm neutral, I disturbed that they are not. They are not here.
And you don't want to be a Jubilee?
No, I cannot be their spokesperson. They must have their own spokesperson.
True. Unfortunately, we did try to actually get somebody from Jubilee, but for one reason or the other, they were not committal on coming on set.
Right, and I preface my remarks with that sentiment because I don't believe in what the president has said. I would have wanted to have somebody here to speak for them. But that said and done, I think the truth of the matter is that government led by the president is trying to put things out of context and to distort them. First, it is true that we had every opportunity to transact the matters that ended up before the ICC locally, but we refused to do so. The deputy president today was extremely vocal in saying, let us go to the ICC.
Let's not be vague.
Let's not be vague. And it becomes very difficult to turn that around and say that it was Raila Odinga who took people to the ICC, when it is very well known by those who care to remember, or those who have memory, that in point of fact, Raila Odinga, Mwai Kibaki, they struggled very hard to ensure that the country did not end up having cases before the ICC. Afterwards, there was Martha Karua, there was Mutula Kilonzo Sr., there was Gitobi Manyara, various persons who tried. But people led by none other than the deputy president. And Aden Duale, who is here now being very vocal and making accusatory assertions, they were the people who are saying, let us go before the ICC. As about the ICC going away, the ICC is not about to go away anytime soon. People like Kipchumba Murkomen mislead Kenyans when they say things like that they were acquitted, they were found not guilty. It is not true that they were not found not guilty, but that is distortion. That is propaganda. That is spinning. Because the truth of the matter is that one case collapsed because the government of Kenya was adjudged as having failed to cooperate with the ICC, as indeed it was expected to cooperate. And then the other one also collapsed on the basis of what was called witness interference. So you cannot, after that, go prancing all over the place, beating your chest and saying that this did not happen. But finally, Raila Odinga, what was he saying? He was reacting to the president's remarks over the holiday, Jamhuri Day, when the president is sending out these vibes against the ICC, saying that it is an imperialist court, it doesn't respect sovereignty, we must get away from it. Raila Odinga is saying that in fact you should be grateful that the ICC relaxed the rules relative to your case. That whereas other people are locked behind the bars throughout the duration of the cases, in your special case, for some reason, you are allowed to enjoy that latitude. And enjoying that latitude, you around, you campaigned, and you even managed to become president. If anything, you more than anybody else should be praising this court and saying that it is a court which exercises a sense of justice, that they listened to us, they listened to our pleas. When you asked to stay away on certain occasions, they gave you the opportunity to stay away. And so you cannot be lumping us together with countries like the Gambia, where the president is saying that we are pulling out of the ICC, basically because he sees that there's an election which he's going to lose, and he sees that he's going to dig in, and having dug in, he anticipates some chaos, and out of those chaos, he anticipates the possibility that he could go before the ICC, or Russia, which is visiting atrocious activities in Syria and elsewhere. And you cannot put us together with these people and say that we are going to get out of the ICC.
Okay. Senator Moses Kajwang, this particular debate, of course, re-emerging, and it is clear. First of all, maybe just to get from you what your stance is and your thought on Kenya still being in ICC, and protracting it and looking at the wider angle. There has been a feeling that the ICC is basically set out to prosecute African nations and African presidents. What's your thought on that?
Thanks, Mike. It's obvious that Barack Muluka stands for the truth, and so what he has said, I associate myself with that. His sentiments, because it's really the truth. It's a naked truth that would be difficult to have a different stand on. The ICC did not invite itself to Kenya. We took ourselves to the ICC, and the chronology of events that Barack has given is very clear, and we know who said don't be vague, go to the Hague.
Right.
They're the same characters who are today saying that they've just discovered it's Raila Odinga who took people to the Hague, when it's very clear that Raila Odinga and a section of the cabinet was for the establishment of a local tribunal. One of the issues that Uhuru Kenyatta and his administration has failed to address is how do we move forward as a nation? How do we take care of the chaos and the pain and the suffering and the loss of property and lives that visited this nation in 2007, 2008? On one occasion, while addressing the nation in parliament, the president talked of establishing a restorative justice fund and even pledged some billions to that fund. To date, nothing is known of that fund. When the president came back to parliament, he never reported on whether the fund had been established and what the fund had been able to achieve. Just about 2 months ago, we had a group of IDPs who had come from Uganda. They camped outside parliament for close to 3 weeks. You know, Mike, these guys disappeared one night, midnight. They disappeared. We don't know where they've been taken to. In other words, we've been trying to sweep the truth under the carpet. We've been trying to sweep those uncomfortable issues under the carpet. The president talked of two things that were quite contradictory in his speech to the nation. One, he warns politicians against violence at the next elections. And with the other side of the mouth, he says that Kenya is going to withdraw out of the ICC. Why did we go to the ICC? It was because of electoral violence. It was because of post-election violence. How then do you raise a flag that I can see the clouds of violence coming, and then you tell Kenyans, let's get out of the ICC? You then should explain to Kenyans that in the event of electoral, post-election or pre-election violence, that my administration has put in place the following measures that will instill fear in any politician or any political group that might be planning to cause chaos. But as it is now, then it means that we'll be dealing with the penal code and we'll be dealing with the existing institutions that have been clearly incapable of addressing issues to do with election violence. What I see the president trying to bring up, and this seems to be Jubilee's strategy. You know, Jubilee's agenda for the nation was never understood by most citizens. It was all about getting out of the ICC trap. And that is how they were able to whip tribal emotions within two dominant communities in this country that felt that their sons were going to be locked up in a foreign jail. Now, Jubilee wants to use this agenda of neo-colonialism and imperialism as an electoral agenda. And I can tell you, lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. If that worked, if ICC worked in the last election, I doubt that ICC will work as a rallying or mobilization agenda in this current election. And you noticed also in the president's speech at Jamhuri, it was devoid of the usual milestones that he talks about. Because there's nothing to report. When it comes to laptops, not done. When it comes to 10,000 kilometers of road, not done. When it comes to LAPSSET, not done. When it comes to 1 million acre, not done. The president is looking for convenient scapegoats or a convenient agenda that he hopes he can rally the nation around. And I don't think that this narrative of neo-colonialism, this narrative of imperialism, is the one that is going to determine the next elections.
All right, Senator Mutula, and of course now still asking the same question, and here being, is ICC fair to Africa?
In fact,
because we can look at it from Kenya's perspective, and of course we do know that, just like Barack Muluka has elaborated, that possibly they were lenient towards Kenya. But in terms of now looking at it from a continent perspective, why is it that we only have African leaders who are on trial?
It's a wrong question, but I'll try and answer you. I'll try and answer you because there's nothing in law, in fact, called corporate crime. You cannot lump people together and say, okay, all of you are being victimized. It's just not possible. Yes. The fact is, ask yourself the question, and the first question was the correct question. Why now? We don't have a pending case at the ICC. I don't believe there's a pending appeal, either by the president or the deputy president. I don't believe there's a pending activity on ICC that is active. So what is the point the president is raising on 12th of December about the impartiality of the court? It's not a fact, because in none of the cases are they alleging that either the mistrial in the case of the deputy president or the withdrawal in the case of President Uhuru Kenyatta. They have not by themselves in court said anything that is negative or would seem to be an appeal of the rulings in both. Number two, so therefore it means that the statement by President Uhuru Kenyatta is political. It's political, and I agree with my brother Senator Kajwang, it's an attempt again, very weak attempt to whip emotions. To whip emotions in the sense that you are simply now trying to create a debate that does not exist. And therefore you start drawing out Raila Odinga, and then you go back to the traditional support base of Jubilee, which is Rift Valley and Central Province, and say, you see, this is the person who has been victimizing us, and it will not work. But three, and most important, is that Kenyans don't like details. And I like Muluka because he gets into the details, because it says the devil is in the detail. We must remind Kenyans that ICC is the court of last resort. You only go to the ICC when certain things in the nation have not been met. People forget, and the media forgets, because you want to feed us with this sort of propaganda, that there's a judge called Judge Hans, the dissenting opinion in the pretrial chamber, said he was not satisfied that the Kenya case should have been at ICC, because he was saying he was not satisfied the criminal justice system cannot handle the Kenyan case. So we actually survived by a whisker to go to the second step of the pretrial chamber, survived by a whisker. So therefore, what the president should be addressing is whether or not Kenya has established a criminal justice system to the extent, therefore, that we would not need to go to the Hague in the event something arose like the one of 2007.
Okay.
That is what we are talking about. And there are many cases, a plethora of cases, including of a gentleman called Lubanga, who was jailed by 2 witnesses only. It was the same case. Do we have a situation where you can say that we have a criminal justice system that can prosecute? Remember, we are going back to the background, where a committee established by the Director of Public Prosecution, led by Dorcas Oduor, the deputy of Tobacco, was given a task of establishing whether we can prosecute a single Kenyan for post-election violence. What is the verdict they returned, my friend? They said, you can't do anything. We have no evidence. It's a tragedy. So therefore, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not persuaded. And that is the reason why Jubilee is pushing for Amina Mohamed to be the chair of the UA Commission. The idea is to whip emotions of the African, you know that thing you're talking about, Africa is being treated badly.
All right.
You know, I mean, you're making it look like bad manners is something nice. It's the new ordinary.
All right.
It is not,
Let me bring in somebody who's been against the ICC for a very long time, and that's David Matsanga. Joining us now on phone. Good morning, David, and I'm sure you've been listening in. And just to get your thoughts and your sentiments so far, David.
Good morning, the panel.
Morning, David.
Morning, David.
All of you, there are 2 sons of mine. One is my brother-in-law, and the other one is a son of my friend. When I was watching, so I will not tackle them. This man in the middle, this man here, who is my age mate.
David, I'm slightly older than you, but proceed.
Go ahead, David.
That's why I said by age mate. I agree with the 2 sentiments of lawyer, my good man, I like so much this one here. I agree. Kenya must move quickly to do what we call redemption strategy. We have not done a redemption strategy.
Yes.
Kenya does not have a redemption strategy. The healing, the reparation, the resettlement of everybody, the reconciliation, the accountability. For ICC to stop poking their nose in Kenya, we must have a special division of the High Court, like we did in Uganda. When I negotiated the Kony crisis, I set up a special division of the High Court. All the commanders that I brought back, 120,000 people, I brought them back to Uganda. Muruka, you have never brought even a single soul. So you also mislead this younger man. When you sit on a panel like this, and you sit on a fence, be in one place. Don't be on the fence, Muruka. Muruka, you see younger men don't follow. At least I like you because you stick with Wiper and the other one sticks with ODM. Muruka is already moving from one party to the other. That's true. Let me come back to the point. Let me bring back Gitonga. Let me bring back to the point of credibility of ICC. The truth is that the credibility of the ICC is dented. They were given the time to investigate cases. Instead, they came back in these countries, used the money. Instead of investigating, they collected money evidence from people like Muruka and others who were writing. For you two people were not there. The Murukas were writing statements, giving them to ICC to fix. Now you can see Matsanga is vindicated. I told you, Raila himself the tongue is catching him. He is now saying, oh, this and that. The statement, Africans take statements in a different way. Raila's statement, if I were Raila, I would not even talk about this monster ICC because he was in the government. Two, Gitonga, let me bring this question of work envelope. The work envelope that is still haunting Kenyans until the Kenyan parliament sits down, looks at Article 35 of the Public Inquiries Act, where all documents that were supposed to be submitted to the government, given to the government. Until you do that and expound, the English word is expound, because Muruka claims to be knowing English.
All right, David Matsanga, let me just hold on that thought and hold on to the line. Let me first of all give Muluka a chance to respond to you, because you've made certain accusations there which I would want him to respond to. Then we can take it up from there. I think also Senator Mutula would also like to say something, but let's start with you, Barack.
Yes, you know, David Matsanga is my brother, but he's my brother from the other side. He's my brother from across the border. And David, I'll remind you that I was initiated before you, so when you talk about me, always remember that, that I can take you before the elders, and I was initiated before you. But having said that, I'll also remind David that he is the outsider who weeps louder than the bereaved. And I don't want to take him back to the Lord's Resistance Army days and the role that he has played. And his friend Ongwen is before the ICC
as we speak,
and
yes.
they haven't said anything about that. We need to know, because he worked with Ongwen and with Joseph Kony up there. And so I appreciate where he's coming from when he becomes hostile to the ICC. He has got personal human reasons to be apprehensive. He's lucky that he kept going there and they did not arrest him because of his role in the Lord's Resistance Army, if he wants to descend to personalized assaults of this kind. But you see, the truth of the matter is what the senator is saying here. That here is a president who is telling us that fellow citizens, fellow countrymen, something sinister is about to happen. The clouds are beginning to gather, and it looks like the storms that have troubled us in the past could be just around the corner once again. And the self-same mouth in the next breath is telling us that we must move away from the ICC. The ICC was a deterrent in the 2013 elections, that people who are conscious of what the ICC could do kind of tamed the wildest instincts within them. And that you don't tell us one morning that we are about to have another confrontation engagement like the one that we heard, and you haven't put in place any of the mechanisms that the senator here is talking about, that Matsanga himself admits that we need. And you are also telling us that the only deterrence that we had, we should be moving away from it. Unless the president himself, and I don't want to impute improper motive on his part, but unless he anticipates some very outrageous things being done by government and being preemptive, because have I not seen that one of the president's closest men has proposed to bring a bill to Parliament saying that we should be allowed to pick up any object before us and defend ourselves during this coming election? Is this a curtain raiser to things that are coming? On a day like this one, I expect the president to be giving us a chronology of what his government has done. I expect him to be giving us context on what is called nationhood. When we talk about the nation, we are not talking about the geographical expression that we call Kenya. We are talking about the people. When this government was on the campaign trail, it was talking about national unity. They spoke of something they called umoja. They spoke of uazi, and they spoke of uchumi. Now, because Kenyans express themselves openly, you start saying that they are fomenting violence. Where is that space for freedom of expression? As government, what room have you given people for openness? Instead, you are threatening people for speaking their mind, for interrogating you. The president's role and the government's role, I know, Mike, you're about to come, but I must drive this point home. The president's role is to lead, is to bring us together. He must find the glue that is going to make us a gultinet as a nation, as a people, not to scatter us with what could very easily be called a fear-mongering. This is fear-mongering, infusing fear into the people and trying to whip up support from the ethnic surrogates.
Okay. Senator, let me just hold you a little bit and take a call from Julia Sowino in Kisumu, then I'll come back to you. Julia Sowino in Kisumu, go right ahead. Okay, Julius, I can hardly hear you. If you can just speak a bit louder.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah, I'm calling from Kisumu.
Yes, Julius.
Hello?
Yes, kindly put off your television, put the volume off or put the television off completely. Otherwise, we'll not be able to communicate. Julius?
I want to contribute something small on the post.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Okay, so.
Please have your television off, Julius. Otherwise, we'll not be able to communicate.
Yes, now my television is off.
Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to send something to you.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, now, whatever the president was sending, the signal he was sending, is anticipating some chaos next year. And for that matter, a normal Kenyan who was affected by the post-election violence is going to find it difficult to hold on, especially when elections are on, because he has sensed some defeat. The way I see it, he has sensed that the foreign countries are actually aiding Kenya, aiding opposition to take over, and that is why he was sending a signal that there might be some violence in the next general election, and for that matter, Raila also has realized that the only way to send his sentiment, or the only way to see that the election was unfair, is by organizing the mass to come and demonstrate in the street, and thereby, and you find that now the Jubilee government has got all the state machinery to make sure that they stay in power. So there is something sensitive on whatever he said on the Jamhuri Day, and therefore, we should expect something terrible, especially next year, if we are not careful.
All right, thank you.
And for that matter, Raila.
All right, thank you, Julius. We've got the point there. Senator Mutula, you wanted to say something in rebuttal to David Matanga.
It's not even in rebuttal. It's to say that as I don't believe, and you cannot say, I mean, with your eyes open, that the image of the court is dented. Because the court does not procure evidence. The court is a system. So therefore, if you look at the Kenyan cases, it is actually we, the Kenyans, who are dented. Now, people argued emotionally when my late father was talking about these cases. He said, when you allow your citizens, whether it's a sitting president, a deputy president in our case, to be subjected to a foreign jurisdiction in terms of law, you have yourself allowed somebody to dent your sovereignty. So we must accept that principle, that we ourselves allowed, that our sovereignty was dented by allowing to go there. The image of the court is not dented. That court has jailed somebody called Lubanga. It has jailed several other people. So therefore, and in the principle of law, it's far much better to jail one person than to have 100 of them out in the streets. So when you look at the principle of the effects of the principle, and Barack Muga has alluded to it, is that this court is supposed to be a court of last resort, but it's supposed to cause deterrence. But let's come back to what the president said. I'm afraid, and for now I want to give the president a benefit of doubt, a little, that his handlers have treated him badly. And it started with the cases about corruption. Now it has gone to ICC. Instead of a president who is a symbol of national unity, the person who we have given the mantle, the sword, to protect us, appearing to be the one who is complaining, we need a president who gives solutions. If somebody is preparing to cause violence, what has the state done? Because you see, when you complain about the opposition, we don't have state machinery. When you complain about NGOs, what are you supposed to do? The president is supposed to tell us that we have put mechanism A to Z to say that if you attempt to cause violence, you will be arrested and prosecuted. The High Court has set up a special division of the High Court for anybody who causes a violence during elections. That is what you're supposed to give Kenyans the confidence. Because let me tell you what we need to do in the next general elections. We don't need a situation like Malindi, where you have so many army officers on the streets that the women do not get out to vote. That is the sort of thing that is going to happen when you say that we are going to have violence in the elections. People will not get out to vote. And that, I'm afraid, is an attempt to maintain status quo. That is a problem as far as I'm concerned.
All right, David Matsanga, I want to get your final comments before I let you go. Then I'll come to Senator Moses Kajwang'. David, just to hear your final comments on this now in regards to ICC.
Thank you very much, Pano, and thank you very much, Michael. Usually, I don't play zombie politics. I play straightforward politics. One, I want to make facts clear on international television like this. I was the chief negotiator and the leader of the peace delegation, not a combatant in the Lord Resistance Army. I was asked by the African Union, the United Nations under President Chisano, and all East African countries, IGAD, wherever you mention them, the British government, to lead a delegation to negotiate peace to return to Uganda. Kajwang' is on the left, can tell you my role that I played. I saved the rural community from extinction in northern Uganda. I have done that. There was nothing that ICC cannot. I was not being investigated by ICC, never.
All right, David.
And the two,
okay.
Let me make it. I was never. So
David would like to discuss the way forward. It's all good to have history and where you're coming from, but let's talk about the way forward.
The way forward.
Yes, sir.
I totally agree that for ICC, and I want to tell Kenyans, for ICC to stop knocking on the door of this country, the government of Republic of Kenya must do two things immediately. One, create what we call a special division of international crimes court, or special division of the High Court that deals with cases. Two, the government of Kenya must now investigate, must take its responsibility, because ICC, Mutula, ICC is a complementary court. Yes. It's not supposed to usurp the sovereignty of Kenya. It's supposed to come and give Kenya complementarity on status, not to usurp the powers of this nation. When you talk about Amina, that Amina is going to AU, no. The African Union is simply saying this, Michael. The African Union has said reform the ICC. One, the chief prosecutor is the one who looks for witnesses.
Okay.
The chief prosecutor is the one who gathers the evidence.
All right.
The chief prosecutor is the one who prepares the charge sheet.
All right.
The chief prosecutor is the one who calls for how long you should be jailed.
All right, David. David, we'll need to move on.
ICC is not a bad institution.
All right.
It is an institution, but it must be reformed so that it is better than, actually, Kibera Magistrate Court is better than the ICC. Let me tell you, in Kibera, the judges have gone to school. In the ICC, apart from Orochi and Osuji,
All right.
none has gone to school. The clerical officers picked from the embassy.
All right, thank you, David Matanga. I think we'll have to wind it up right there because David has a lot that he has to say. Let me hear from you, Moses Kajwang, as we now wind up on ICC and move on to other things. Maybe your final comments on the ICC.
You know, David brought up something that I find extremely important. And of the two things he talked about, I would add a third thing that Kenya needs to do. We invested in a process called the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, and it went on, and we got a report, a very detailed report, and the president has never talked about the TJRC. And this is, the recommendations of this commission are stuck somewhere in parliament, a parliament that is dominated by Jubilee, by the hawk that we've seen called Aden Duale as a leader of majority. If he wanted this matter to be prosecuted quickly and for parliament to adopt the resolutions or the recommendations of this commission, it would have been done by now. What we must invest in is a process of establishing truth, ensuring that there's justice, and reconciling the different constituencies and the different groups in this country. Because electoral violence is just a manifestation of something deep. When someone, like in the case of Kivuitu, when Kivuitu made his now very infamous statements that he did not know who had won, you know, there was eruption of violence. And on the surface of it, you'd think that people were fighting over the results of the elections. But there are some underlying issues where a certain group feels that if this other group steals its way into power, then the issues to do with land that have bedeviled that particular region for ages and for generations will never be addressed. And so that bigger picture of truth, justice, and reconciliation is what we need to invest in, and it is what the president needs to give this nation comfort, that his administration takes it seriously. Now, I do recall, again, in an address to Parliament, the president did one thing that was one of the recommendations in the TJRC report. He offered an apology on behalf of the government on historical injustices. And we said, tick, yeah, you know, one thing done, that's good enough. But an apology is not what will get to the bottom of these issues. You have a situation in Coast Province where people who were called squatters on land that was theirs by through ancestors or through birth, being required to pay to get that land from somebody who acquired that land under means that might not be very transparent. The president must assure us, and I think as a way forward, it should not just be fear-mongering and hate-mongering and terror-mongering. He should be giving us solutions. And we have said this in the past, and my party leader, Raila Odinga, there's a time at which TJRC was part of our campaign agenda. I do wish that Jubilee would address this issue so that when we get into the next elections, we know that every vote that is cast will count, and every vote that is cast will be counted. And we also know that irrespective of who takes over power, that those historical issues are going to be addressed, and there'll be already in place a mechanism that provides evidence to the public that the issues are being addressed. But finally, Mike, there is an issue that we cannot escape from. Could it be that Uhuru Kenyatta has sensed that he's going to lose the next elections? And could it be that he's trying to tell his bedrock support, particularly the ethnic base, that you see, if I lose, these guys will take me back to The Hague, because the cases were vacated or the cases were dismissed or set aside because of lack of evidence? Could it be that he wants to tell them that vote for me again so that I can be able to cover my back? Because if I'm a normal citizen, there is a possibility that these guys will take me back.
Those are questions that we cannot answer. It's only the president
I think in my perspective, that is the ethnic whipping, the whipping of ethnic emotions that is terribly dangerous for this country and should not come from a gentleman who's supposed to be the embodiment of nationhood.
All right, and well, I think we'll now put a pause on the ICC. Let's move on to something else. And of course, 2017 is a year where Kenya is going to go to the polls, and maybe that's why some of these things are coming up. And we've seen formations, and we're expecting to see even more coming up. We do know that Jubilee Party basically absorbed and became one party. Many parties came together. We also now have the National Super Alliance, the NASA as it's being called, and we had Wiper also endorse and have Wiper Party have Kalonzo Musyoka as their flag bearer. But let's just look at the conference that took place and some of the statements that were made. Then we can discuss the formations that are coming up. And these are some of what was going down during the conference at the Wiper Party.
We must come together and dispassionately agree on a single presidential candidate for the 2017 elections.
8 months to the elections, we are stronger and more united than ever, ready to face the Jubilee as an expanding opposition.
Nitakuja ili tudhibitishe kwa Wakenya kwamba kuna jukumu kubwa la kuhakikisha Wakenya wanaondoa serikali ya Jubilee.
Mheshimiwa former Prime Minister, shetani akija kwako kwamba uachane na wenzako, ujue yule shetani sio yule mwingine, ni yule yule mwenye wewe baada ya kusema tosha wakakutema wakakupiga dege.
All right, that's part of what happened during the conference, but they also had something to say regarding election. And let's just listen in.
Hizi natakana akamatwe na anaswe. Mwizi akamatwe na, nikisema kamata sema nasa.
We now must all be selfless. I will not take anything that is pretense. I have seen enough pretense in this country. I have seen enough betrayal in this country.
Bwana Kalonzo, nasa hawa jamaa. Nasa wote. Asibaki hata mmoja, nasa hawa.
All right, and well, that's the conference just in bits and pieces. And I'll start with you, Barack Muluka, on your thought regarding now NASA and the National Super Alliance. Other than the fact that they're coming together to beat Jubilee, is there any other glue that holds them together? Is this a symbol of national unity?
Well, we have seen these kinds of formations in the past. Two of them very clearly comes back to mind. In 2002, we saw the formation that became NAC, and it was quite rapid. Within a very short time, it had captured the imagination of the nation. And although there are those who are beginning to warm up to the Uhuru project, including in his own backyard in central Kenya, in the Mount Kenya region, they very quickly shifted gears and joined the NAC formation once that proclamation was made that Kibaki Tosha. And then, of course, we saw the formation that was within ODM. I think ODM was behemoth in 2007, and you start witnessing that kind of excitement, and that in fact a few months ago there was a certain feeling of complacency within the Jubilee fraternity. They were taking next year's election as a done deal. They were looking at it as a fait accompli and talking in fact of 2022. They have got to go back to the drawing boards. This is happening at a time when there's disaffection in parts of the Rift Valley. You cannot take the goings on in the South Rift among the Kipsigis community for granted. There are disaffections within the Nandi country. There are disaffections within the Somali communities which have voted for Jubilee. And there is palpable apprehension within the Jubilee fraternity. Whether this can hold or it's not going to hold, I don't know. They must find an agenda. They must find a message that they are sending out to Kenyans. And I think that they've been talking about looting, theft of from public coffers by those who are in government. They've got to maybe to make that real. And on the other hand, as you have heard senators here saying, it looks like Jubilee are bereft of any meaningful message and agenda that they can position before Kenyans, because they say we have done SGR and they are told, yes, in the process you have stolen so much. That we have done these things for schools. In the process you've stolen so much. We have done NYS. In the process so much has been lost. We are trying to do medical equipment. In the process, there's so much stolen. So it becomes very difficult for them to play the developmental card. And if you talk about the national unity, that was one of the agenda, I think that the esprit de corps, that feeling of belonging, of being part of it in the country today is at its lowest since independence. I've lived in this country for many years, 60 years if you want, and I can tell you from institutional memory that the feeling of that sense of nationhood has never been lower than it is today, and President Kenyatta must do something about it.
All right, Senator Moses Kajwang, what ideology or what is it that brings NASA together other than the fact that you have this the incumbent currently, which maybe CORD is looking to beat and, of course, gearing themselves to beat? Is there anything else that brings the nation together within NASA other than leaders who have one objective, and that is to remove Jubilee?
Mike, first of all, the WIPA conference that happened last week or this week, and my brother Mutula is deputy chairman. I think it was a very good show. It was put together very well, and the WIPA leader made a very articulate and a very passionate speech. And if you followed his speech, it will tell you the ideological grounding of an alliance of opposition parties and what we would stand for. Because in contrast to what Jubilee continues to perpetrate, and you know, as Barack says, that every project that has been undertaken, there is always that dark lining of 30% or 40% of corruption through procurement. And an opposition alliance would strive to institute and put in place a government that operates on utmost integrity and fidelity when it comes to procurement and implementation of public projects. Two, an opposition alliance will seek that truth, justice, and reconciliation that we've talked about. Because we believe that the solution does not lie in pulling out of established institutions or pulling out of international treaties. The solution lies in having good manners at home. And the good manners at home would be driven by the spirit that the head of state or the government deploys and shows to the rest of the nation. An opposition alliance would stand for inclusivity. We have a situation right now, Mike, where if you profile particularly certain critical departments in government, if you look at the security sector, if you look at the energy sector, and if you look at the principle behind Jubilee, there is this thinking that Jubilee is about 50-50, that the old URP wing and the old TNA wing is supposed to share positions 50-50. We saw that when the cabinet was being rolled out. We saw that when permanent secretaries were being unveiled. And we have seen that subsequently in appointments to parastatals. So we are looking at integrity, we are looking at reconciliation, we are looking at inclusivity, and we are also looking at growth that is balanced. Mike, the president has been visiting many parts of the country. And I know he has visited Western. I don't know whether he went to Emmanuelia.
I hope he's
and I hope when he goes to Emmanuelia, he's not just going to address people outside the post office in Emmanuelia. Because when he goes to certain parts of the country, in the morning, he's launching a tarmac road. In the afternoon, he's launching hospital equipment. In the late afternoon, he's launching a new market. And in the evening is launching another developmental project for 3 or 4 days. But when it comes to Emmanuelia, or it comes to certain parts of the country, in the morning is addressing a roadside rally, in the afternoon is addressing elders, in the evening is addressing youth, and late evening he has a public rally. So, you know, that is the inclusivity, and that is a growth that needs to permeate every corner of this country, irrespective of political support. And that is what an opposition alliance would stand for.
All right, we are running out of time. Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., and to you now, and given that WIPA Party, of course, had their conference and put you know, the flag bearer and said, this is the person we are expecting as the flag bearer. What is it? It all sounds good on paper as a coalition, that we're going to fight corruption, inclusivity, you know, having everybody included, and all these things on paper. But practically, what is it that is going to be done differently?
Let me say this, and I hope I can pronounce this word correctly. Thank God that my friend Barack Muluka is here. It's called Kamarandire.
Camaraderie.
Yes, the Kamarandire of the National Super Alliance. It is predicated, all of it, on history, on Kalonzo Musyoka, Raila Odinga, Moses Wetangula, Musalia Mudavadi, even Ruto, even Gideon Moi. All these people are coming from a historical perspective that in all cases where they have started a cause which they themselves believed in, they've either walked away from the cause, they have been cheated of the cause, or they themselves, in their personal interest, have sacrificed the nationhood for their personal interest, and therefore we have lost the cause. And therefore, if you ask me of one single thing that puts them together, is that mutual fear that they have seen this before and it's going to happen again if they do not, first of all, sacrifice their personal interests, if they don't put the nation first. Because then, therefore, we're going to end up with the same old thing. But let me say this, that it's not what they say. Because we have done a lot of things as a country of ensuring, first, we have devolution. We have said we have a new system. But we have people who the spirit is willing. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is not. That is not what we need to change. And therefore, my own view, and I've said it to them, and I hope they listen. And the fortunate thing about being a lawyer is that you give somebody advice and you leave them to decide what they want, is that if at this point in time, towards 2017, they put their personal interests first, they will themselves be lost in the process in 2017 because Kenyans are not going to accept a person who carries personal interests first, as opposed to nationhood. Why is it that people are so disgruntled? Why is it that the president appears to be all over the country appearing to be launching projects? It's because the people don't even believe that even when you launch a road, that is going to happen. When you are going to have standard gauge railway, it is not laced with corruption. That if you have laptops, that there is nobody has received a benefit out of it. That is the sort of thing that they need to work on, to build the trust of Kenyans. That if I give you a responsibility, Michael Gitonga, to do something, you do it dispassionately of yourself. And
do you think that the opposition has built trust on Kenyans?
It's because there's lack of trust in Kenya and lack of trust in Jubilee that this attempt, and that's what I'm saying, the Kamandira is based on the fact that, as he said, Kenyans' nationhood, people don't believe in anything.
All-time low.
All-time low. So they are coming together is to try and bring back that thing in 2003 we were voted as, that the most optimistic nation. We lost the cause, and President Mwai Kibaki lost that dream for us, that at some point Kikuyus, Luos voted for Kikuyu because they believed in the nation. That's where we lost the cause. And therefore, it's yet another attempt. There have been many attempts. And because their fingers have been burnt several times, we hope that the pain they felt then, they're going to remember that pain at the back of their minds every time they sit and talk about NASA. But my prayer is that we can return nationhood. And lastly, to say that Jubilee collapsed political parties, including of a gentleman called Kalemendile that have had very few members. The symbol is a stool, and many other small little political parties, in an attempt to say that it's national unity. So you have two competing interests.
Okay.
Which of those are Kenyans going to look at from a mirror and say, this is a reflection of Kenya and not a reflection of tribe?
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Because of time, we'll have to wind it up right there. Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., Makueni County Senator, also Barack Muluka, who's a publishing editor and strategic communications advisor, Senator Moses Kajwang, Homa Bay County. Thank you very much. That's the State of the Nation. Also, thank you for participating via Twitter. Because of time, I'll read your comments as we go along later on. But we'll need to take a break, and KTN Home will change to Life and Style. And for those of us on KTN News, we've got some news updates. Then after that, we've got Tech Central. Do stay with us.